It took me a while in my life to find my tribe. And whenever I would do something that felt true to me, but maybe which I knew was against how I grew up or the way the mainstream did things, I would wake up in the middle of the night in a shroud of shame. You know, the kind that's just kind of stuck to you in your gut. I had just memorized this way of being in the world that caused me to automatically feel shame every time I showed up for myself. It's kind of a problem. In this video, I want to share how I unmemorized toxic shame using the method in this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. But before I do, I want to be clear. Now, at the time, I think I was still going to many events and I was working many of the events as a volunteer, but I was working on something different at those events, which I can talk about another time because that's interesting too, working on a different personal issue. But that's not what I was doing there when I was working on shame. And I say that because you don't have to spend thousands of dollars or go to events to do this stuff. You can do this stuff by working on very simple practices in your daily life. And you can change everything about your life. In fact, I couldn't have unmemorized toxic shame at events because I needed to be in my real life to be able to do it. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. And before I go into my process, I want to share that I'm actually having my young women's group read this book together with me. And they are having the most incredible epiphanies. I got this text, I don't know, yesterday. I was going to tell you guys that the last couple of days after our conversation, I felt so free and had the mental and emotional capacity to rest, like truly rest and have fun. I agree with another woman in the group. Something like magic happened in our conversation last week. This is the most exciting thing that can ever happen in my day because I want everyone to feel this freedom. Okay, so this is how I began to feel lighter, love myself more, and be able to show up as myself without an internal smackdown by unmemorizing shame. So I won't go through specific steps of this because you can read the book yourself. I'll just sort of give you the summary of what I did and what happened. I acknowledged the emotion that I wanted to unmemorize, which at that time was shame. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to write about all the things that that emotion brings up for you. So one of the things I did is I became very familiar with how that felt in my body. I felt it in my gut. I had to get very familiar with the thoughts that that sensation would trigger for me. Oh, you suck. People hate you. Fortunately, I can't even remember what they were. But I had to become familiar with the way that I acted when I was feeling that emotion, when I was thinking those thoughts. Did I hide? Did I not show up for myself? Did I keep my mouth shut? Did I speak more? What did I do? How did I think? How did I feel? And how did I act when these things were happening? What did this sensation of shame in my body kick off? So getting really grounded in what it feels like in my body, because things hit as a sensation first. And then how did that make me feel? How did it make me act? And what did it make me think? Got super clear on that. Then I also got really clear on who I wanted to be, how I wanted to feel, and how that person might act. And so I had all of these things in my mind and I had them all written down. And I would meditate every day, as Dr. Joe tells us to do. And I would meditate and I would visualize who I was going to be when this wasn't happening, how I was going to feel. And I would picture myself out in the world and the thoughts that I would have when I didn't feel these debilitating feelings. And that primed my brain to be able to pick up quicker in my daily waking life when I was actually firing those thoughts, because we can't be aware all the time. This is the most we can do, is just try and chip away at our ability to be aware of what's actually happening. So if I heard myself saying those things, or I saw myself acting in a certain way, or I noticed the feeling in my body, then it would be a trigger to me, like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't who I want to be. This is my old self. I want to be my new self. So what is the choice or the decision I have to make in this moment? That's why I say that you have to be in your real life. Like, you can go to all the events in the world, but if you're not in your real life, you're not going to have the opportunity to see all of the times that this is coming up. I will say that what really made the difference for me was when I became really familiar with that rotten cabbage in my gut and the way that it felt. And I became so familiar with it actually that I used to do these meditations in the morning called, we call them Botecs, Blessing of the Energy Centers. And so I would do a Botec, if you're familiar with those, and you go through each energy center. And I was really having an aversion to doing those meditations because every time I got to that second center where shame lives, it just lit up and it was so uncomfortable. And it was to the point where I knew that if I triggered that in a morning meditation, then I was going to walk around all day feeling that feeling. And I did. I walked around with that feeling for like 3 months. And it felt like I was walking around with a rotten cabbage in my gut. In fact, at one point, I remember thinking, maybe I have an ulcer. Like, maybe this is physical. This is so intense and so uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? That feeling of like toxic shame in your body. It was so uncomfortable, but I didn't look away. I kept my gaze there. I kept being in observance of that sensation that was happening in my body and the things that it made me want to do and the thoughts it made me want to have. And I stayed in observance of all of those too, without identifying with those thoughts, meaning, oh, I see that this sensation is causing me to think that I'm a piece of shit, not I am a piece of shit. Or I see that this sensation is causing me to want to defend myself against blah, 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 or think that somebody else is a piece of whatever. Not saying that person is a piece of that. I need to defend myself and go do those things. Just in observation of what the sensation in my body was making me want to do. Okay, so I identified that I wanted to get rid of shame. I became very clear on the thoughts that I had when certain situations would have, how I would act, the sensation in my body, what it made me feel, and I became so clear on it that when I meditated every morning, I would reiterate these are the things that I feel, and then I would imagine who I wanted to be and how I would feel and act when those things came true. And that all helped me become more able to do that in my day-to-day life, to catch myself when that happened. And then I walked around with that feeling in my gut for like 3 months. I think it was about 3 months. And I would talk to it. I would say, you've got to go. You can't be here anymore. And I would say, thank you for being here. I recognize all the things that you have done for me to protect me in my life, but I don't need you anymore. I would try that. I would try and imagine all of my little emotions sitting on a couch, the way that you think about Inside Out. I would imagine all the little emotions sitting on a couch, and I would imagine shame there. And I'd be like, listen, you can stay there. It's fine. I know you feel like you're doing something really important and it's a great job. You can stay there and you can watch, but you can't drive. I'm going to drive. And then after however long, I would shout at it. I literally remember driving all over Colorado, because that's where I lived at the time, just talking to this emotion and playing with it and trying to accept it and not accepting it, noticing when I was resisting it. But when we resist things or push things down or get angry at them or have some kind of fake, oh, everything's love, I love, 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 without really working through it, none of that works. So I had to go through the day-to-day experience of just acknowledging it, wrestling with it, being in observance of it, being in observance of all the things in my daily life that would bring that up. And then one day I realized it wasn't there. I literally realized it wasn't there. And that's when I wrote this blog that I'm going to share in the notes below, because it was like utter freedom. So this freedom came primarily from being able to go to the dark space, not identifying with the dark space, catching myself when I was thinking or acting or behaving in a way that would suggest that I was identifying with it. Like, in other words, if you're feeling really ashamed, you're typically going to be more timid. You're typically not going to say what you need. You're going to I would mope around. I would just sort of, I just wouldn't want to really come out of my shell. And I would feel very paranoid and insecure about what everybody was thinking. And I might try and gossip to other people and try and get, people on my side or get them to see my point of view or whatever it was. When you become aware of those things that you're doing, then you're aware that that's your old self. And that plays into the old thing that you're trying to get rid of. You have to start becoming someone new. You have to start doing different things so that you can become that different person. And it is really the observation and the non-identification with that old self that is going to move you leaps and bounds ahead. Now, remember that these are things that we've memorized. These are things that we might have memorized ancestrally. It might not even be your shame. It could be somebody from your family. It could be from a past life. It could be from something that happened that didn't have any intention when you were little, but your little body interpreted it as you're bad because you did this thing, right? We don't know where all of these things necessarily come from, and we don't need to. We just need to know that if we want to let go of them, we have to become really aware of them, all of the thoughts, emotions, feelings, and sensations in our body that go with them. And we have to stop identifying with them. And we have to start acting. We have to start acting like the new person. So it takes some time because these are things that we have memorized. But oh my gosh, it couldn't be more worth it. Now, if you're also wondering, how do I deal with other emotions? Well, I do have a video on resentment that you can look up, but know that whenever you work on one thing, you're really working on everything. So pick an emotion that you want to try and unmemorize and start working on it, and let me know how it goes. If this was relevant to you, throw a comment in the chat, subscribe or like. Let me know your strategies for dealing with these kinds of things.